They say everything happens for a reason, but I suspect everything happens for a Reese's. Like this commercial break. Did you need 15 seconds away from music or 15 seconds to eat a Reese's? Perhaps it's true. Everything happens for a Reese's.
Hi, everyone. This is Laura Mazzullo, the host of Practitioner Corner, and I am here with Rachel Cupples, who is a very seasoned and strategic talent acquisition pro. And welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here with you, Laura.
I know. And it's fun because we're both on opposite coasts. And I was trying to think about how we met each other. And I'm wondering if you have the recollection of how it happened.
I well, I can't remember, the day, but I want to say it was like 2018. It was right around the time I had just reached out to someone that listeners may know, William Tincup,
Yep.
through YouTube, through a video I
Oh, I
saw on
love that.
YouTube, wanting to ask his opinion on some software I was, considering uh, trying to get budget for, where I worked at the time. And he
Sure.
convinced me in that conversation to get on social media and talk with other folks. So I had signed up for Twitter. And I think within like my first few months on Twitter, somehow we found each other. I don't know. We just started talking about, I think we were honestly talking about authenticity in the workplace, but I don't remember 100%.
I'm laughing because we still talk about authenticity in the workplace 8 years
Yeah,
later. So
I know.
I guess it's still important to us.
I know.
I love that. Yeah, it's funny. So the question I wanted to start us off with is one that William Tincup, a guru in our
Mhm.
space, actually asked me once. And he said to me, Laura, when you think about talent acquisition or HR or the world of work right now, what keeps you up at night? And I
Mhm.
remember, like, since he's asked me that, I've really tried to reflect on it frequently because I'm finding it changes. And obviously, I don't mean it literally. I don't believe we should be losing sleep about work, but I like the concept of like, what am I worrying about? What am I thinking about? What's on my mind? What am I really aware of? And so I want to throw the baton to you and ask you that question. What's been
Yeah,
keeping you up at night?
absolutely. There's a few things, but as far as where we're at in the world today, we're making like increasingly like consequential decisions about people,
Yeah,
while at the same time we're trying to make those decisions faster, cheaper, more
yeah.
automated, maybe even. AI is moving into recruiting and HR, I think, faster than a lot of organizations really are thinking through like the consequences of it. And I'm, want to be clear, like I am not anti-AI. I'm a big fan
No,
of it,
you're very good about technology. You
as
embrace it. You do.
I do as a supporting tool and when used ethically. But I would say, to answer your question, what keeps me up at night is that I think we're getting incredibly good at making people decisions faster. But I'm not convinced. I don't know about you, but I'm just not convinced we're getting equally good at making them better.
Yeah, we need to unpack that a little bit. So we'll do that slowly together because I think that's a very good point that I think we collectively seem to want speed
Hmm.
and like let's make it faster and easier and more efficient, which in theory is smart because recruiters, especially in our space, get very bogged down with the tactical and the transactional work.
Absolutely. Uh-huh.
But you're feeling like maybe we're missing something by doing that.
Well, I guess when I'm, again, going back to the questions, that keep me up, it's just, I think it's sort of that, the crossroads of where intent and impact are supposed to meet, but I'm
Mm,
not sure that they're meeting like on target a majority of the time in a lot of situations. And some of that could just be uh, we're all trying to figure it out.
yeah.
It could
Let's
be,
get in that granular together. Let's like try and think about what an example of
Mhm.
that could be. And this could be places that you've been or peers of yours that you've seen. Like, where are you feeling like, gosh, maybe the intent and the impact aren't meeting?
Well, and again, I'm making assumptions here, right? Because maybe it is the impact that, an organization wants. But when I think of like There are so many talented, builders out there building, AI tools for HR and recruiting. And there's some excellent tools on the market. But what I've seen an increase of are tools, like as an example, to go, you know, I'm being marketed as a job seeker, like Rachel, sign up and use our tool, and we will make applying for jobs easy for you. We'll apply for all the jobs for you.
Right.
But where, and it's it's based on, I guess, AI, doing the work for you. However, on the back end, what job seekers don't realize, I think, is that recruiters, we can often see that, it was a system or an app doing the work because they're changing the email address. It's the way things are worded. Um, and I think, in this case, this example is the tool is meant to apply for people. So it's doing
Right.
what it's supposed to do. But job seekers are oftentimes paying for these tools. And I have not met, in the last 5 years, a job seeker since these tools started, really in the last 3 years, I guess, coming out. I haven't met a job seeker that's landed a job from this type of tool. And so
Right.
I'm just wondering, I guess I wonder, is this just to make a quick buck? Is it
Yeah.
really helping the labor market? And I know this is, we're here to talk about recruiting in HR, but the labor market is a huge part of what we do. You
No,
know,
of course. I want to talk
we
about what's on your mind. If that's on your mind,
so
let's do it. I agree. It's
we're
important.
part of adding and subtracting to it all the time. And
Right.
so, I just wonder with tools like this if they're really like in the best interest of people.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing is that maybe it's adding stress to people's lives when it's actually supposed to be doing the opposite. And I
Well,
don't know how to bridge that gap.
yeah, well, potentially. I mean, the fact that I feel like it's, they're preying on job seekers.
Yeah.
It's one thing to sign up with an agency or, with work with a recruiter, but it's another thing to be, putting in your credit card information and
Yeah.
expecting a program to find you your next job. Like, if
I
that is
know.
what the future of hiring is like, I'm really worried.
Yeah. And you and I have talked about this over the years that we don't like people who try to guarantee job seekers something.
Right.
Pay me and I'll guarantee you a new job. I'll guarantee you 5 interviews. I'll guarantee there's because you and I both know that it's impossible to do. I mean, the market is
Yeah.
out of our control. The way hiring managers behave is out of our control. And yes, recruiters have the ability to influence, but I don't know. I know what
When
you
I,
mean. It's like our job seekers really kind of obviously they're in a vulnerable place as it is, and then
yes.
you're sort of preying on it.
Well, I think you just connecting the dots further, from what you were just, sharing. We've talked a lot about sort of the, air quote, snake oil career coaches out there promising, results, right? For a
Yeah,
very pretty penny, and even
absolutely.
there are
Very.
consultants out there doing the same thing. And I think that the tools that I'm talking about are just the AI version of these people,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so it's unfortunate, right? Because I think organizations are missing out on potentially hiring some incredible talent, um, because people are out here using these tools and they're not making it, and they're getting flagged as being someone that, okay, well, you didn't really apply, so we're not going to move forward.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask you to expound upon that a little bit more because I think for those people listening who may not know what it looks like on the other side, can you explain a little bit more?
Yeah,
Like
so I've
when
seen it
you're
on my
okay,
end, I've seen it from three, maybe four, but was the three that I remember for sure. Where on the back end of an applicant tracking system, everything, when you apply for a job online, everything gets dumped into this system, right?
right?
And these systems need to track the progress, right? And so they change your email address to theirs. Um,
Yeah.
so it forces you to go back into their system to get results. And also so they can track the results of it. But on the back end, we can see that it's not from rachelcupples@gmail.com. It's from ABC company, you know?
Okay. And so for employers who have high security, or a lot of people are
Well,
doing like, yeah.
yeah, there could be issues with that, but where I've seen it the most, and just talking with other recruiters, especially over like the last 18 to 24 months, is that when recruiters see that, right, wrong, indifferent, whatever you want to look at it like, uh, they're not they're not engaging with those candidates.
There's a judgment placed
Right.
on that person. Okay,
So
that's so interesting.
I don't agree with that judgment, right?
No, of
But it's
course. Yeah,
happening.
yeah.
So,
This is the
um,
first I'm really hearing of that, and so I'm glad we're talking
yeah,
about it because I must not be the only one who hasn't given that thought yet.
this has
Um,
come up in a few handful of conversations that I've had, yeah, over the last couple
yeah.
of years. And it's scary because I'm seeing even more of those.
Yeah, and that makes me want to just talk to you for a few minutes about judgment in general, because I think
Hmm.
like you and I have talked again in our community, and for those listening, like Rachel and I both really believe in social media and building global community, and we've seen each other on TikTok and YouTube and LinkedIn and Twitter, and just
Yeah,
there's such
everywhere.
power in that. Yeah, everywhere. And I think one of the things that we've talked about is bias and judgment. Obviously, over the years, you know, that's usually talked about in terms of like the protected classes and the usual
Mhm.
kind of general buckets of like an unconscious bias training. But you're reminding me that there are so many nuanced places that judgment shows up. Like
Yes.
as specific as what email address are you using?
Yeah.
Or in this case, what email address is the AI that you're using generating? It's like we've all talked about the open to work banner on LinkedIn. Is that a good idea or a bad idea? And it's always
Mhm.
interesting to me how many people really judge it.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I mean, I think that's another thing that keeps me up at night, and I'm sure it does to you too.
Yeah, I think that especially in 2026, I feel like each year that's gone by the last few years, it's just like just when I think it's not going to get, any more serious. But it's so tough for job seekers out there. There are so many, like, not just qualified, but like exceptionally talented and experienced folks that are, it's taking an average of like 9 to 18 months for people to land work. And most of the time it's not full-time work, it's contract or, short term or even part-time.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we're introducing bias for, as an example, for somebody that is using an AI tool to help them become more efficient to apply for roles, like they would be applauded, I would think, in the workplace if they found a way to automate their desk more, you know?
Yes, yes.
Um, but hearing how a lot of recruiters, and I think, this would be an excellent poll for you to run, at some point, maybe on LinkedIn or something, but like a lot of recruiters that I've spoke to, um, and not just within my community, right? Because I try to, and I know you do too, to talk to people that don't always think like I do, you know?
Mhm.
Um, but they look at it as a negative, like people like you didn't put in the work to apply. They don't trust that.
Yeah,
These are just some things that I've heard, like, well, I can't trust the information is real. And I mean, I'm always going to push back or ask more questions to try and create, more of a thoughtful conversation. But I think at the end of the day that it doesn't matter whether somebody, hand wrote their resume and it got to me somehow mailed still, whether a system sent it to me. If I find somebody that has experience, it's my job as a recruiter to verify that experience. I mean, that's why we need recruiters.
yeah,
It's part of what we do is not just evaluating candidates, but you know verifying.
yeah.
So to exclude a candidate just because of one of those systems, I feel like it sounds like I might be talking about both sides of my face, but it's like I'm concerned that there's, systems out there taking, financial advantage of job seekers, but at the same time, it's like the job seekers are getting hit twice because
Yeah.
then are uh, employers going and recruiters going to look at those applications that come through that are blatantly from, you know, programs like that and just automatically reject them. I don't know.
This is fascinating. I think you should definitely initiate a LinkedIn conversation about this because I don't think people are talking enough about it from the candidate lens. And I think
Yeah.
you also made a really good point about like using an AI tool would be something you'd get applauded for. Let's say you were an HR leader or TA leader, like
Hmm.
in your actual job. And it's funky to me that there's a double standard when you're a job seeker. And that
Hmm.
shows up a lot. It's like, it is annoying. And I know you and I do a good job of educating hiring managers, but it's bigger than us. Like it's really kind of it's a gap. It's a gap in the market that maybe internal recruiters aren't trained on this enough or hiring managers aren't trained on this enough. But I think it comes back to bias and judgment and like you said, staying curious and asking questions and not making initial assumptions about people. And I'm sure you've seen our peers struggling with this, like other TA pros and other hiring managers. I'm curious what advice you'd have for them to get through some of this judgment and bias.
You know, I think what it really boils down to is just remembering why we're doing what we're doing and what problem are we trying to solve, with
Yeah, yeah.
hiring or changing a process, whatever it is. And just I know you and I have said this a lot throughout the years, but it's like going back to the basics. Why are we here? What are we doing? What are we trying
Yeah.
to accomplish? Um, and in hiring, looking at hiring from a what problem can this person solve for me, lens versus is this person qualified, or can this person solve the problems that we have? I think that it can help. I know that, the world of work, as far as within recruitment, is it's not one thing, it's not a cookie, there's not a cookie cutter recruiting process across the board,
Yeah.
across industries or even job titles, even within
Right.
the same job titles and same industries, it's different, right? So I think that um, an area that I've had the opportunity to explore more in the last few years, is consulting and contract work. So I've had the opportunity to slip in and out of, different industries and different organizations at varying sizes and, uh, just teams and team members at different levels within recruiting and HR. And I think one of the biggest areas for maybe reflection, is are the people making the decisions? I'm actually writing a blog post about this that comes out next Monday. But the
I
people
can't wait.
making the decisions, or the processes, are they even talking to the people doing the work?
Mm,
Have they done the work? Do they even have access or understand how to do the work? Um, and consultants aren't often, brought in when things are going well or smoothly, right?
sure.
They're usually brought in to, again, solve a problem, sometimes fill in, whatever it is. But most of the problems that I've been hired as a consultant to solve have been the undoing um, of processes that have been created that were, again, not saying the intention wasn't there, not
Yeah.
saying there wasn't good intent, but the impact of not involving the team or the people that are doing the day-to-day work had created over time some like catastrophic like
Are you talking
inefficiencies.
about bringing in like, so let's say you're hiring for, I don't know, the marketing team. You're talking about
Mhm.
making sure that you're talking to the current marketing team.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm also talking about like uh like in finance, how do you get a purchase order approved? Like that process. If you don't know how if you don't know what the current process is or how the tools within the process work, you really should be asking the team that's using them. But it's the same
Oh,
thing.
right.
I think
Right.
it's um, some of going back to recruiting, some of the hardest roles that I've ever had to fill where the big aha or the level unlocked moment happened were when I spoke to the people that were doing the job,
Yep.
and I think that that is something as recruiters that we can sometimes take for granted because we have 30 recs on our desk, 50 recs on who knows how many requisitions we have on our desk, right? And we're just trying to get through the day and keep all of our hiring managers happy and recruiting leadership and, hit our metrics. But sometimes you got to slow down to go 10 times as fast down the road. But will the organization let us? That's, you know, that's another thing
I
that I,
know.
I think is worth exploring because I've seen
I,
that as well from nonprofits to big tech to small to medium sized businesses. Like just in the last, you know, yeah, in the last 24, 36 months, I would say that one of the biggest things that I've seen in common across all of those companies that have brought me in either on contract or as a consultant is that I've come in and no one is giving the team or the people doing the work permission to inhale,
yeah.
exhale, and
Yeah.
okay, let's regroup. I'm not saying stop the work, but yes, let's stop the work temporarily for a moment and make sure that we're not just running on a hamster wheel and getting nowhere.
Yeah. I mean, I think we both know so many internal recruiting teams that are operating like a hamster wheel, and it's just not healthy for anybody involved. Not the
No,
recruiting team, not the hiring team, not the candidate experience. And it's funny, there's like basic math that I try to remind executives about. Like if you have your recruiting team, like you said, working on 20 requisitions each, there's probably, let's say, 3 to 5 candidates per job that are interviewing. And that's a low estimate. I mean, that's how I like to work it, but probably some roles the manager wants to meet 10 people. But okay, for easy math, we'll say 5 people per role. So if you have 20 openings and you have 5 candidates per role, it's 100 candidates who each week are expecting and frankly deserving a certain level of experience, right? They're going to ask questions of the internal recruiter. They want prep information. They want to debrief after their meeting. They're a little nervous, understandably. I think it's quite frankly literally impossible to do that well with that much of a workload.
on top of being, depending on the organization, being held to, I mean, I'm a fan of metrics. I'm going to say early in my
Yes.
career, I didn't get them. I was still learning, you know what I mean? I was like, well, I'm still not a fan of time to fill, but I also understand where and why we still
Yeah,
need to be
why we do
measuring
it.
it.
Right.
I
Yep.
don't think is it the be all end all metric? No, but it should be measured. But I think, again, going back to not every organization is set up the same way. In recruiting, for an example, in some organizations, you're sourcing to a point, right? And
Yep.
then you're passing it off to someone else on the team, and they're taking the candidate through, you know, the last half or the last quarter of the process, and then it's their job to close, right?
Yep.
In some scenarios in where I've found that I thrive the most, it's when I'm responsible for the whole shebang. I
Yeah.
want to I can better
Well, candidates prefer that, I have found.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
100%. And I can better strategize on behalf of the business, the hiring
Yeah.
manager, and the candidate if I'm, in the seat with them the whole
But
way.
it
But
has to be a volume you can actually maintain.
it
That's
does. It absolutely does. But even when you are doing the handoff type, method, and it works for a lot of organizations. Again, going back to what your point though, is it best for candidate experience? I'm not sure. It doesn't seem to be. But I believe that we need to empower, and I feel like we've had this conversation so many times, and I felt some momentum just in the community, like we were getting there.
yeah.
But I feel like we've taken several steps back. But we need to empower our recruiters to not just deploy better AI tools,
Yeah.
but to push back and not, in a, air quote disrespectful way or, whatever, but in a way that
Advisory way.
yes, yes, we need to go back to empowering our recruitment teams to be those internal consultants and
Yes.
subject matter experts.
Yes.
Because whether anyone wants to give recruiters, that have been recruiting for, you know, let's just say 5 to 10 years. In 5 to 10 years, you've seen a lot.
Yeah.
You've experienced a lot. Um, you know, in 7 to 15 and so and on, like you've seen a lot. And not to discount what maybe a recruiting manager has seen or a hiring manager has seen, but recruiting should have a voice, in the process.
Absolutely.
And I'm seeing it a lot more where that's not the case.
Me too. We have to kind of reflect on what that is, but I agree with you. I think part of it was that we saw so many talent acquisition teams get dismantled in
Yep.
24 and 5, and now they're understaffed and overwhelmed, and it's just a vicious cycle of,
Well, and a lot of
yeah,
recruiters are contractors now, right? So
yes,
in my last role, um, so grateful for it. I spent, 6 months as a senior sourcing recruiter. Um, but I was a contractor. Yes, I could, message my hiring managers through Slack and things like that, but there were certain things that, I mean, as a contractor, you just can't do, you
I get
know?
it. I know.
And so as companies continue to realize they need the actual people power and humans, again,
Yes.
hiring recruiters back, many of them are hiring contractors and not using them to their full potential or empowering them to actually lead the
Yeah. I love
the
that you keep
process.
bringing up the word empowering. I want to keep thinking about that. And I want to wrap up our session with just asking you if you have, I'm sure you have many, but I'm curious if you have a favorite quote or a catchphrase that you have on your desk or in your notebook, or just that you
Oh,
like to come back to when you think about your career, or just in general, some advice for the listeners.
you're right. I have many.
I know you do. I know
In
you
the
do.
world
You
of
could pick
work,
you could pick a few, but your favorite,
I know.
whatever.
I'm going to pick two. How about that? We'll
Okay.
just keep it
Perfect.
simple. Um, I'll share them and then, we can talk about them. But, my first one that's really I've been thinking quite a bit about over, the last few months is, familiar doesn't mean effective. Uh,
Hmm.
and the second one is, and this is a part of actually that new blog post I have coming out next Monday. Um, Questions aren't threats, they're invitations to think, and
Wow.
if we look at
Yeah.
that versus looking at it, I think in a lot of cases when people ask questions, depending on who's receiving it or who they're speaking to, it can seem like they're being questioned, you know.
Yes. I
And
love
that's
this. And I
not the
think this
case.
is so reflective of your personal brand and who you are, because you are someone who feels like life is to be questioned and examined and to reflect, and that recruiting as a whole is something that we should not just get stuck in complacency, but really kind of move to more modern. And like you said, you're embracing AI and you're questioning it, and you're embracing change and you're questioning it. And I think that is really a beautiful philosophy that you carry and should, I'm sure, inspire many people listening to this. So thank you, Rachel.
Absolutely.
It's exciting. We can talk for hours. I'll leave the listeners with this today, and we can always do a follow-up session again. But let's keep talking and let's keep brainstorming. And I'm so excited by talent acquisition still after all these years. And I know you are too. And we have to keep the faith that it's going to keep improving. Even if we've gone in a little bit of one of those two-step back type phases right
Yeah.
now.
Well, and I don't think it's the recruitment community or the HR community. I just think it's circumstance. I don't think
Yeah,
it's a lack of people wanting,
right.
um, to be
Do well.
advisors or to be empowered or to empower. I think that we're back to what we saw a lot of for different reasons, but we talked about this a lot in 2020, um, fear-based decision making.
Yeah,
And um, that, especially within HR and recruiting, we're the first to get slashed, it feels like, right? And so when business is down or things aren't going right, and I just think it's important to remember that sometimes it's not the people, it's the processes, and we need to really like
yeah,
stop. Let's go back to the basics. Basics. Let's look at it. It's not always a bad hire. It's not always. Sometimes it's the process. Sometimes it's
yeah.
um, assumptions that haven't been challenged, you know?
That's right. That's right. Right. And so often we see recruiters getting blamed for things that are process problems, like you're saying. And
Yeah. I mean, but recruiters and, HR folk, we make mistakes too. It's not like that doesn't happen. We
of
do.
course.
Um, but I just think, we've talked about, we need to show ourselves more grace, and continue to do that. But really, I just think we need to continue to be curious
I
and be
agree.
curious out loud with one another and not be afraid to be.
I love that. Okay. We'll leave on the note of being curious out loud. Thank you so much for your time,
Thank you,
Rachel. It was such
Laura.
a pleasure to have you here, and we will
Yes,
speak again
anytime.
soon. Okay, good. You'll come back. Have a good day.
You too.